On Tuesday, July 14th, Mr. Fahim Saleh's cousin discovered his dismembered body in the living room of his apartment with his head, arms, and legs amputated.
If you're someone's sister, the next time you see your brother, please hug him as tightly as you can for as long as you want. Because that's all I want to do every time I see those photos.
Inside apartment number 7 at 265 East Houston Street, 33-year-old Fahim Saleh should have been working on his next billion-dollar idea. But Fahim wasn't working. Fahim was dead. And what happened to him after he died would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in New York City's recent history. When Fahim's cousin arrived at his apartment for a routine welfare check after not hearing from him for 24 hours, she never could have imagined what waited behind that door. Fahim Saleh was not just another tech entrepreneur. He was a visionary, a trailblazer, someone the media had dubbed the Elon Musk of the developing world. Born on December 12, 1986, in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, to Bangladeshi parents who frequently relocated for work, Fahim's family eventually settled in Rochester, New York. From an early age, this young boy displayed a remarkable aptitude for technology that would set him apart from his peers. While other kids were playing video games, young Fahim was teaching himself programming. While his classmates were doing homework, he was building websites and dreaming of changing the world. His first major venture came during high school when he launched prankdial.com, a controversial prank call service that would go on to generate over $10 million in revenue. Imagine being a teenager and showing your father a $500 check from Google for advertising revenue. That's exactly what Fahim did, winning his father's approval and opening his first bank account for his entrepreneurial earnings. But Fahim wanted more than just money. After graduating from Bentley University in 2009 with a degree in computer information systems, he expressed a powerful desire to build ventures that would add legitimate value to humanity. He was tired of controversial apps. He wanted to make a real difference in people's lives. And that's exactly what he did. In 2015, Fahim co-founded Pathao, a ride-sharing and food delivery app in Bangladesh that would quickly become one of Asia's fastest-growing startups, later valued at $100 million. He saw opportunity where others saw obstacles. He invested in emerging markets when other tech entrepreneurs were too afraid to take the risk. Then came Gokada. In 2018, Fahim founded this motorcycle ride-hailing service in Nigeria, raising over $5 million and employing over 800 drivers. He was bringing transportation solutions to people who desperately needed them, creating jobs, building infrastructure, and changing lives across the developing world. His friends and colleagues remembered him as a doer, someone who didn't just talk about making a difference but actually turned ideas into reality. At just 17 years old, a young coder named Ahmed Fahad pitched apps to Fahim, who hired him after a coding test, calling it the biggest chance anyone has ever taken on me. This was who Fahim was. A mentor, a believer in young talent, someone who gave people opportunities when no one else would. So when police arrived at that horrific crime scene on July 14th, the question that burned in everyone's mind was simple: who would want to hurt Fahim Saleh? The answer was closer than anyone could have imagined. Much, much closer. The NYPD immediately launched one of its most intensive investigations in recent memory. Police said from the beginning that they believed the motive was financial in nature. Someone close to Fahim had a monetary dispute with him, someone who had access to his apartment, his finances, and his trust. The detectives began pulling surveillance footage from the building, examining financial records, and tracking electronic communications. What they found would lead them to a suspect in less than 3 days. A suspect so close to Fahim that the betrayal would shock everyone who knew them both. The surveillance video told a chilling story. On Monday, July 13, 2020, at approximately 1:45 p.m., the cameras captured a masked individual following Fahim into the elevator. The elevator that opened directly into Fahim's private sanctuary. The person moved with purpose, with confidence, like someone who had been there many times before.
If I could just explain that real quickly, the way this building is set up, when you go up in the elevator, it takes you right to your apartment and not into a hallway. Due to the active and ongoing investigation, I will not get into the actual cause of death.
As the elevator doors opened into Fahim's apartment, the masked figure deployed a taser to Fahim's back, causing him to collapse to the floor. There was a brief struggle, approximately 30 seconds, during which Fahim fought for his life. Defensive injuries on Saleh's body indicated resistance during the attack. But the attacker was prepared, armed, and determined. The attack resulted in fatal wounds. And then, the unthinkable happened. The killer stayed and began cleaning up, attempting to erase any trace of what had just occurred. But here's where the killer made their first critical mistake. When using a taser, the device releases tiny identification tags called anti-felon identification tags, or AFID tags. These tags are scattered everywhere when the weapon is deployed, and each tag contains a unique serial number that traces back to the specific weapon and its registered owner. The killer tried to vacuum up these tags, frantically cleaning the scene, but in their haste, they missed one crucial tag, just one tiny piece of evidence that would unravel everything. That single AFID tag would lead police directly to the killer's door. And when they traced that serial number, when they saw who had purchased that taser on June 8, 2020, the name that came back shocked everyone involved in the investigation. Tyrese Devin Haspil, 21 years old, Fahim Saleh's personal assistant. The young man Fahim had mentored, trusted, and given opportunity to. The person who handled Fahim's finances and personal matters.
Also believed that he owed the victim a significant amount of money. That is all I can say at this time, due to the fact that the case is still ongoing. Mr. Haspil has been charged with murder too, and we are working closely with our partners in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office.
But why? Why would someone who owed everything to Fahim Saleh commit such a heinous act? What could possibly drive a 21-year-old assistant to not just kill his boss, but to carry out such a calculated, brutal attack? On July 17, 2020, at approximately 8:45 in the morning, just 3 days after the discovery of Fahim's body, members of the New York-New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force arrested Tyrese Haspil in the lobby of 172 Crosby Street.
Regional Fugitive Task Force. At approximately 8:45 this morning, 21-year-old Tyrese Haspil, Haspil, was taken into custody in the lobby of 172 Crosby Street by members of the New York-New Jersey Regional Fugitive Task Force and transported to the 7th Precinct for arrest processing.
When detectives looked into where Haspil was arrested, they discovered something that would prove just how cold-blooded this crime truly was. Tyrese Haspil was staying at a luxury Airbnb that he had rented for his girlfriend's birthday celebration. Tyrese Devin Haspil grew up in what could only be described as a challenging environment on Long Island, New York. His childhood was marked by his mother's mental health struggles and an abusive household. His mother, who allegedly suffered from schizophrenia, would lock him in his bedroom and physically beat him. This trauma led to periods in foster care, homelessness, and eventually his emancipation at age 17 after conflicts with his family. Raised primarily by his grandmother and aunt, young Tyrese exhibited what those around him described as early signs of emotional detachment and rebellion. In middle school, he created violent graphic novels, disturbing artwork that perhaps hinted at the darkness brewing inside him. But despite these challenges, Tyrese was academically bright. He graduated from Valley Stream Central High School in 2017, where he excelled in web design and participated in the Future Business Leaders of America program. He had potential. He had skills. He just needed someone to give him a chance. In May 2018, at just 19 years old, Tyrese Haspil was hired by Fahim as an executive assistant. This wasn't just any assistant position. Fahim, true to his generous nature, gave Tyrese access to his personal and business finances. He trusted him with credit cards, bank accounts, and sensitive financial information. Fahim saw potential in Haspil and treated him like a protege. For most people, this would have been a dream opportunity. Working for a successful tech CEO, learning the business from the inside, gaining experience that could launch a career. But for Tyrese Haspil, it was an opportunity of a very different kind. By fall 2018, just months after being hired, Haspil began embezzling funds through what prosecutors would later describe as two sophisticated schemes. The first scheme involved creating a PayPal account under a name that mimicked legitimate vendors. He would process payments through this account, siphoning money while simultaneously forging bank statements to conceal the transfers. It was clever, calculated, and for a while, completely undetected. The second scheme, which began in December 2018, was even more elaborate. Haspil established a fake corporate entity and bank account designed to mimic legitimate business transactions. Money would flow through this fake company, and Fahim, busy building his empire across continents, wouldn't notice the discrepancies. In May 2019, Haspil resigned from his position. Most people would assume this meant the embezzlement would stop, but they would be wrong. Haspil continued stealing, continuing to exploit the access and trust Fahim had given him, even after he was no longer officially on the payroll. Over the course of these schemes, Tyrese Haspil stole nearly $400,000 from the man who had given him his start. He used it to fund a lavish lifestyle that was far beyond what a 21-year-old former assistant should have been able to afford. He showered his French girlfriend, Marine Chauveau, with extravagant gifts, luxury handbags, designer shoes, a private yacht tour. He was living a lie, presenting himself as successful and wealthy, when in reality every dollar he spent was stolen from the man who had believed in him. Then came January 2020, a moment that would set in motion a chain of events leading to Fahim's brutal death. Fahim's accountant discovered the theft. Initially, they believed it was $90,000, though they had only traced $35,000 of it definitively to Haspil at the time. Instead of involving authorities, Fahim confronted Tyrese privately, and here's where Fahim's generosity, his belief in second chances, his faith in human potential would ultimately seal his fate. Fahim offered Haspil a 2-year repayment plan. Fahim viewed Haspil as a mentee deserving a second chance. Haspil made partial repayments, but here's the twisted part. He was making these payments using funds from the ongoing PayPal scheme. He was stealing more money to pay back the money he had already stolen. And all the while, he continued to embezzle aggressively, the amounts growing larger and larger. In March 2020, Haspil actually followed Saleh all the way to Nigeria with a knife, but ultimately aborted that attempt. Back in New York, he stalked Saleh in Hopewell Junction, considering arson or an attack during one of Saleh's runs. By May 2020, his focus had shifted to Saleh's apartment. He studied diagrams of neck anatomy and obtained building plans. He even accessed a vacant apartment across the street from Saleh's building, copying keys and installing a Nest camera for surveillance. On June 8, 2020, Haspil purchased a taser pulse, delivered to his Brooklyn address. On June 17, he bought contractor bags, a Swiffer, and a saw, all using funds stolen from Saleh himself. The cruel irony wasn't lost on investigators. Haspil was using his victim's own money to purchase the tools of his murder. And then came July 13, 2020, the day all that planning would finally be put into action. Haspil entered Saleh's building at 8:30 in the morning, hours before the actual attack. He waited in a stairwell, patient and focused, watching and waiting for the perfect moment. At approximately 1:40 p.m., Fahim returned home, completely unaware that death was waiting for him just feet away. Tyrese followed him into the elevator, wearing a mask to conceal his identity from the building's cameras. As those elevator doors opened directly into Fahim's apartment, Tyrese deployed the taser, striking Fahim in the back and causing him to collapse before finishing him completely. After his initial cleanup, Tyrese discarded evidence in the Hudson River, disposing of items that could link him to the crime. But he knew he needed to return. He knew there was more work to be done. The next day, July 14th, Tyrese came back to Fahim's apartment to complete his gruesome task. He had purchased a Makita saw with Fahim's credit card, along with additional cleaning supplies. During the dismemberment process, Tyrese searched for human joint illustrations on his phone, looking for guidance on where to cut, how to separate the limbs most efficiently. But then, a complication arose. The saw's battery died. Most people, if they were truly in the grip of extreme emotional disturbance, would panic. They would flee. They would abandon their plan. But not Tyrese. He left the apartment, went to Home Depot, and bought a charger, again using Fahim's credit card. He was so confident, so calm, that he took the time to go shopping in the middle of dismembering a body. While Tyrese was out buying that charger, Fahim's cousin arrived at the apartment for her welfare check. The scene she walked into, the horror she discovered, would haunt her for the rest of her life. The cousin's frantic 911 call, later played during the trial, captured her horror in real time. His head is missing, his arms are missing, and his legs are missing. They cut it off. When police arrived and Tyrese saw them from wherever he had returned to, he fled. But it was too late. The investigation was already closing in on him. After Tyrese Haspel's arrest on July 17, 2020, the prosecution began building what would become an overwhelming case against him. The evidence was staggering in its volume and damning in its implications. Surveillance video from the building showed the masked figure following Fahim into the elevator. Financial records traced purchases of the taser, saw, cleaning supplies, and other tools directly to Tyrese. That single missed aphid tag connected the taser to Tyrese's purchase. His phone's search history revealed weeks of research into anatomy, weapons, and disposal methods. But perhaps most damning was what Tyrese did after the murder. This is where the defense's claim of extreme emotional disturbance truly fell apart. Post-murder searches on Tyrese's devices included terms like dismembered body and news articles about Fahim's death. He was following the media coverage, tracking what police knew, staying one step ahead, or so he thought. But even more revealing were his activities in the days following Fahim's murder. While Fahim's family was discovering his dismembered body, while his friends and colleagues were reeling in shock, while the tech community was mourning the loss of a visionary, Tyrese Haspel was planning a party. He continued preparations for Maureen Chauveau's birthday celebration, a lavish affair that would demonstrate just how detached from reality or how calculated he truly was. He bought balloons and a custom cake. He purchased Louis Vuitton bags costing $7,349.06. He bought Louboutin shoes. He arranged a yacht tour. He rented an $18,000 per month Airbnb. Every single purchase was made with money stolen from Fahim Saleh. Every luxury item, every celebration, every moment of that fabricated lifestyle was built on the corpse of the man who had given Tyrese his chance. And it gets worse. Sources indicated that Tyrese was also texting another woman post-murder, planning to meet her. Prosecutors used all of this to show a complete lack of emotional disturbance. A person truly in the grip of extreme psychological crisis doesn't go shopping for luxury goods. They don't plan elaborate birthday parties. They don't calmly leave a crime scene to buy a battery charger and then return to continue their work. The trial, which took place in Manhattan Supreme Court, presented these two competing narratives to the jury. On one side, the defense painting Tyrese as a victim of his own traumatic past, driven to desperate acts by fears of abandonment and loss. The defense team worked hard to humanize Tyrese, to make the jury understand the trauma he had endured. Dr. Barry Rosenfeld's testimony about Tyrese coming apart at the seams attempted to create a psychological framework for understanding the crime. But the prosecution's case was simply too strong. The timeline of planning, the research, the multiple aborted attempts, the calm execution, the methodical cleanup, the post-murder activities? On June 24, 2024, nearly 4 years after Fahim's murder, the jury returned their verdict. They had rejected the extreme emotional disturbance defense. They had seen through the attempts to excuse the inexcusable. Tyrese Haspil was convicted on all counts: first-degree murder, grand larceny, burglary, tampering with evidence, and concealment of a corpse. The jury had spoken, and their message was clear. This was not a crime of passion. This was not the act of someone in the grip of uncontrollable emotion. This was murder. Calculated, premeditated, brutal murder. On September 10, 2024, Tyrese Haspil stood before the judge for sentencing. The courtroom was filled with Fahim's family, friends, and colleagues, people whose lives had been forever changed by this senseless act of violence. The sentence was handed down: 40 years to life in prison, with full restitution ordered for the money he had stolen. At 25 years old, Tyrese Haspil would not be eligible for parole until he was 65, if ever. He would spend the best years of his life behind bars, paying for the betrayal of the man who had believed in him. As of October 2025, no appeals have been filed or reported. Tyrese Haspil remains in custody, and the case appears to be closed from a legal standpoint. Do you think Fahim could have avoided death if he had fired Tyrese immediately he found the embezzlement out? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.